What's going on, everybody? Welcome to MCM Modern Christian Family, Modern Christian Mondays. What did I say? Modern Christian Family Mondays. That's correct. But MCM is Modern Christian Mondays. Thank you for tuning in. Let's go ahead and take a moment right now to share this live. Go ahead, tag some men that need to watch this. I know some of y'all peeped the comments. Tag some men that need to watch this, some women who need to learn about some men that need to watch this. This is going to be a good time. This is the perfect time to have MCM because there's a lot of man crush Mondays sitting here, you know, it's a good MCM, but it's fine, man. Yes, y'all go ahead and put that in the comments. Let us know. We don't mind you telling us. We know we could look good. We know that some of you may be watching for that reason, and we don't mind as long as you get the message. But we are here to have real, relatable, and relevant conversation. We are not flawless people, but faithful people. We are not flawless people, but faithful people. And we are excited to have this conversation. I got my dad here with me, Derek. So some of y'all may know this. Y'all see Derek and then y'all see Derek. But we got a really special guest.
We got a ringer in here.
We got a ringer in here. Who came in at the last moment with the clincher. My Uncle Derek is here. And so if many of y'all don't know, my one and only blood aunt, she married someone named Derek years ago. And that's my Uncle Derek. And he also has a son named Derek. So there's two senior Dereks, and then there's two junior or the second Dereks. And there are 4 Dereks in my family total.
So when they say Derek, we all do one of these.
We all have different nicknames or versions that we're trying to get or last name to let people know which one we're here. But we are all going. Mom said yes, especially the one in the black shirt.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, King James. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? That's right. King
He's still not the GOAT.
Oh God.
MJ the GOAT.
Oh God! So look, we're not about to talk about that tonight. Although
I hear somebody right there say, "Oh, what about King Jesus?"
Although I know a lot of men.
Give me a little King.
I know a lot of men that got emotional reactions to what we're talking about. So this is a good segue into our topic tonight because we are talking about emotions, and I think it's going to be really dope to have a bunch of men
and emotions. Right.
To have a bunch of men sitting on this couch talking about emotions because we know that it's something that we often don't do, especially in a public forum. So y'all getting special. Y'all getting a special thing because we don't sit around and just talk.
That's not gonna happen.
About our emotions. Just that's not a normal thing, although it's something that should become more normal. And it was really funny when we asked my uncle before he got pulled into joining as our special guest. We asked him, he was heading out the door, and we said, we talk about emotions tonight. What you think about emotions? And he said, I don't got none.
I had no emotion.
And I know he was joking. But he said, I ain't got no emotions. And I think that's a good segue. I'm going to start with my dad because I want to know, when you think about emotions as a man, what is your history with emotions? Like dealing with your emotions?
So long before I knew anything
don't
about
give me the
real
stuff.
People stuff, emotions, I pulled this. Everybody knows this one song, right? Check this out. In the final weeks of 1966, Smokey Robinson was with his friend named Al Cleveland, and they were in a Detroit department store. And it was a successful year. Smokey Robinson was riding high on the cess of going to the go, yeah. It was a blockbuster album, and it had 4 top 20 hits. Well, he was with Cleveland, and Cleveland had wrote some of the songs, and they had a whole bunch of cash. So they went to this popular store, and they were buying stuff, and they were talking while they were shopping. And after they browsed for a while, Smokey Robinson suggested they go someplace else. And then Al Cleveland said, I second that motion. But Cleveland attempted to say, came out his mouth was, I second that emotion. And I submit to you that we know from way back, the old school, that's something that we recognize very positive. Because that song says, if you feel like loving me, if you feel like giving me a lifetime of devotion, I second that emotion.
So that was the first time you knew about it.
I first thing I knew about emotion.
From the song.
From the song.
From the song. So all I knew is emotion must
So
be good.
you knew it
It's supposed to
existed,
be-
but nobody.
existed.
Did anybody in your childhood talk to you about your emotions?
No, I didn't know that throwing tantrums and all that kind of stuff was emotion. But all I knew is emotion was good because I listened to the Smokey Robinson song.
What about you? Did anybody tell you about emotions? Did you have any conversations
No,
about
I
emotions?
didn't have a conversation about emotions, especially not with my father. It's always that stereotypical, don't wear your emotion on your sleeve, and I think I'm one of the ones that's able to control my emotions.
Okay.
As a business owner, you have, it's almost like you have that poker face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's almost like even when you go and buy a car, you can't be like, oh, I love this car, give me this car, but you have that poker face where you want to get that deal, you get it for less. Same thing with in business. It's when I'm in these meetings and I'm talking with different individuals, and I just have that stern face and business mind and business look, impression on there, and just making it seem like that
you gotta put a shield up. You can't.
Yeah, you want that car, you can smell that fresh leather.
But
You want it,
show
but
it
you
to
can't
them.
let them know it, right?
Exactly.
Now that's
Right.
the illustration. We're gonna dig deeper into that, but that's the illustration that's gonna dig into a lot of what we're gonna talk about tonight. I'll tell you my first time dealing with emotion. I was thinking about it today. My first memory of emotion really doesn't deal with myself. It really deals with my dad, because my dad was never a person to show emotion. He really was not. There was only one time growing up, there was only one time I would see my father cry, or one space, and that was in church during worship. If we was in church and we was in worship and the spirit was high and God was just good, he would have one masculine tear that would roll down his face, and that would be it. That was the earliest recollection.
I know another time he showed emotion, but he wanted to cry, but he didn't.
Yeah.
So he bust out with a song.
Oh, that was at
That was at the funeral.
That was
So he just bust out with a song, but that's the way he showed his emotion.
Music was a way. That's interesting. I just
Very
thought.
good.
Hold on,
Very
that's
good.
something I just thought
That's
about.
very good.
Is I didn't realize
that's
that
good.
really music was how you expressed your emotion.
Mhm.
Because I think
That's
about
good.
the fact that when Michael Jackson passed away, and when Michael Jackson passed away, we were concerned about my father. That was his favorite artist of all time. And I never forget, I came home when Michael Jackson passed away, and my dad was sitting on the couch, staring at the TV, watching hour after hour after hour of Michael Jackson video, just standing there. And I didn't realize till just this moment how much music was wrapped up in your representation of emotion.
But I think that's the way that your father showed emotion. He didn't really have Michael Jackson had a connection with Michael Jackson, but he had a connection with the music.
Right.
That's what it relived certain emotions from certain songs.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the way. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
I saw mommy kisses.
See?
Okay.
Yeah.
So no, look. So
Man, that Michael Jackson
I
Christmas
enjoy
album.
it. We giving all of these positive, wonderful feeling examples of how we connect with our emotions. But I think it's funny that a lot of what we're talking about has to do with some sort of outside source that allowed us to express our emotion.
Sure.
So I want to ask, okay, going back to the same historical question, what was the difficulty back then when you were growing up? Like you said, your dad taught you, wear your feelings on your sleeve. How did that not serve you? How was that difficult at times to not show that emotion at times?
Well, I wouldn't say it was difficult, but I think I channeled my emotions. So I was able to control my emotions because I know that, as that stereotypical man, that you don't, cry or you don't show the emotions and things like that. So I was brought up like that at a young age to be able to if you fall down, get up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a problem with somebody, you front it head on. You just don't have outbursts. So even as far as in class, you know what I mean? I mean, sometimes you sitting in class and something just come over you and you want to burst out yelling or something maybe, but you have to understand, you have to control your emotions, not to take that, take over ownership of you.
Dad, what's some of the difficulty of the way you handled your emotions when you were
Okay,
young?
so I was emotions. My mother claims that I was a very affectionate child. She
Okay.
said I was I was very loving because my father wasn't in the house, so I had my mom. So in terms of the emotions, you that exchange was mom, and moms are very loving and very tender. And as a kid, I was very loving, but what I didn't have is I didn't have a father to teach me how to be a fighter.
Mhm.
So that being affectionate and not hardcore, growing up hardcore, made you a target sometimes.
Yeah. Now let's deal with that, because I think that's something that we as men don't acknowledge enough, that having or showing any level of emotion was a very vulnerable place to be in. I think about what I said when I was younger. Because I was so exuberant and excitable all the time, I'm a person who's always been very in touch with my emotion. I think it's the theater part of me. And so I think that was weird even for my father growing up, to have a child that was so bursting with emotions at times. And so I think, why do you think that showing that emotion?
Well, so it wasn't that I would, it was different from having a son that had emotions. I allowed you to, because I didn't see. I played football, basketball, track, did everything, and I wanted you to make your own decisions about. Matter of fact, you were so smart, you read so much that I said, my boy, I could try to push him towards sports, but I could see that he has a great mind. Anytime you could sit down and read what's that little wizard book you read?
I don't know. Harry Potter.
What's that, Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Anytime you can sit down and read a Harry Potter book that's bigger than wider than my hand in one setting, I like, this boy got something on his life.
But hold on, Dan. I think I want to pause on something, because I think it's interesting. I don't know if other people caught it, because we were talking about showing emotions, and you immediately went to talking about sports.
Yeah.
And I think that men have a thing where we tie emotions to either a masculine sport,
but we
thing.
show emotions when we playing sports.
Okay,
that's the biggest thing. You probably show the most emotions when you playing a sport, a basketball, football, that you willing to bring it all out of you because of that sport. And I want to go back to what Derek was saying, when he was brought up by his mother, and I'm on the opposite spectrum. I was raised by my father.
Okay.
In the household. So, I go back to it. It was my father was don't show emotions, be strong, be tough. And so it's a, tale of two tales, you know what I mean? That the way I was brought up and the way Derek was brought up to be, he was affection, he showed emotion. And it's like B, I was like, I'm gonna keep my feelings in. I'm not gonna show emotions. I'm gonna control what I need to control, because I'm that so-called manly figure, but that's just the way
so the opposite was, because I was free and loving and open and possessive, not possessive, but expressive. It made me a target. I mean, I was friends. I mean, I was liked by everybody. I mean, I was just going through high school, friends. I mean, I fought Ricky Nicholas in the 5th grade, but I mean, I remember that, playing kickball. He won. I was picking a team, and he didn't like that I picked a girlfriend instead of him, and he wanted to fight. We had that. So I'm just saying, I had fights growing up, but I wasn't a fighter. I was a pretty nice, lovable kid.
But that's funny.
But it made me vulnerable, and I got injured by somebody by being like that. Yeah. By somebody who lived on my street, upperclassmen and stuff like that. And it made me change for the rest of my life almost.
Wow.
I mean, and then
change the way your emotions.
I was in junior high, and that changed me, and I began to toughen and harden my exterior as a result of that, because I didn't want to be vulnerable.
You don't know how many, but I think that's a good moment to just pause, because I think there's a lot of men and women who know men that are watching that have been through that same experience, where life or things in life, when they show the emotion, because they always try to say, oh, you should show your emotion, you should be free in your emotion. But I think in life, especially for men, especially for African-American men, life has injured traumatically a lot of men, where they've reclused their emotions down on the inside, and it's changed them. They don't show, like, I think this is probably my first time hearing that my dad was so expressive, because I think by the time you had me, I knew you loved me. I never knew that love was never a question, but I just never thought my father was an emotional person or showed emotion.
But he might have wanted to show you that so you wouldn't be so expressive or emotional. Because at that time, like he said, he had to change the way he expressed himself. You know, so he might have thought he didn't want you to go through some of the things that he
so
went
it becomes
through
protective.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
It becomes protective. So if we're doing it because we feel like we need to protect something, what is the other side of that? Because I think there are a lot of women and other men that are watching that feel like there's a negative aspect of that sort of protection, because a lot of men don't show emotions when they probably should show emotion. And so here's a question: have you ever been in a place where someone has been either bothered or asking, or you felt like you did not show an emotion, or you held controlling emotion that you should have allowed? Was it you could have been more loving, you could have been more expressive, you could have been more, because I think one of the emotions we do know how to show as men is anger.
Sure.
That's the one that we seem to be very in touch with.
But I think as a male, the individual that brings out the emotion in us is a woman. I really think that. You know what I mean? And as on the aspect of you don't show enough emotion, you don't show enough feelings, is, you know, the individual, your partner, your significant other, you know, that might, you know, pinpoint that aspect of it.
But women are in touch with their emotions.
Oh, absolutely.
They're very in touch with their emotions. They know how to be expressive and you know, they didn't even got the chicken neck in there where they can really let you know how they feel. Men, we're a little recluse. We don't show it as much, and that's because, like you said,
we see that as a good thing?
Well, all the time. I don't see it as a negative thing, though.
As a negative thing?
I don't see it as.
I don't think it's blanket. I don't think it's blanket, but I think we've talked about the times where it can be a good thing. I'm interested in the times that it could not be a good thing. Okay, I think there are times it could not be a good thing.
So your wife put a few slogans on the advertisement that I think are very good, that promote the kind of men not sharing. And I'll just give some of the words: man up.
Okay, let's talk about each one. Let's talk about each one.
Man up.
So the idea of man up is I get it, because that's something we all been told. We're supposed to be strong a certain way, but I think in it inherently for many men, it insinuates that they are not a man already.
Right.
And so that can be a little harmful to people that are listening,
or not expressing manhood,
because I think we have, as men, have a very specific image of what manhood looks like. So if someone is outside, like I think about metrosexual men. Like I used to laugh and watch people on TV, and you see these, I don't know, I'm at events a lot. So you see these event planners who do these major events. Right. And some of these men are very metro, and I'm not even getting into the sexuality conversation. I'm just talking about they're out with the way they express, the way they show themselves. They don't have no problem showing that. Sure. And so there's a connotation that they are less of a man because they express that emotion.
Because they talk well, they dress well.
But some of them got more kids and are straighter than.
But that's what you portray. You think that, you know, an individual showing emotion, expressing themselves, you know, outgoing. That's what, you know, that's that side that side emotional.
Right. We what's the word that when you paint, you put people in a
preconceived notion,
perception. A perception, but it's another word when you put people in the same mold. Again, stereotyping. When we put men, we automatically assume that to be a man, you gotta always
man up,
be hard, you know, and you know, if you ain't cussing, you ain't communicating, and that kind of thing.
Times have changed. It's a lot different to be able to express yourself, to show emotion that it has been. Maybe like me and your father grew up. Versus what you have the way you was growing up.
Yeah, because I think when I was growing up, like I feel like my father is a completely different person now. When I don't know who this man is sitting over here now, because back when I was growing up, I think sitting under him and not always feeling like I looked like the emotional, like I was too emotional, that showed some emotion. I was showing too much emotion. I felt like my father, not that he was heartless, because I always thought he loved me, but that he had no emotion to share with me at times. I could sometimes feel like sometimes I wanted a hug.
Okay. So let's take the next word when you're talking about that. Be tough.
Yeah.
Be tough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, you know, my daddy may not have been in the house, but my daddy was tough.
Yeah.
You know, my mama used to, I mean, I'm 18 years old going to college, and she smushed me upside my head. You know, my mother was tough. I you know, for that tough love. But that discipline and her fearing that belt and that racetrack, you know, in my mind, I don't care how big I was, I love my mama, I respect my mama, and the way she disciplined me, I felt that I had to be tough because I wanted you to have the same values that I had.
But here's the problem with that.
I wanted to instill in you the same kind of values and reverence that my mother did.
And I think that's a positive thing. And that's why I want to be clear. That's why I want to be clear for the people that are watching. I think when you're communicating with men or you're trying to communicate with men to learn how to express their emotion, you can't vilify completely what they were trained up to feel, because there was reasoning. There were traumas that men went through and reasons why they developed protective skills or things they were trying to teach their kids or different things like that. But at the same time, that be tough principle, somebody put in the comments, they said that hardness that men have taken a lot of them to an early grave.
Now stress, you know, stress, but it goes to, I want to give an example for when I coaching my son. I coached him the way I was coached. So you do the things the way you was brought up, the way you were coached. This day and age, these young men, you have to coach them differently from when me and your father were growing up playing sports. You know what I mean? Because we were just, you know, man up, get up, be tough. You know, a lot of these young men now, they are emotional.
Yeah.
They you know, they wasn't outside playing in the streets and on the playground. We played against men.
Right.
Well, we played against older people.
No, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Because we've talked about this before, and
absolutely.
And that's good because I want to. We talked about this about another conversation, me and my dad and my parents. We were talking about how people from you all's generation worked so hard to get the next generation to a certain place in life.
Sure.
And you all developed that defense to get us to where we are now. And now we've never had to live in the world that y'all had to live in.
Right.
And so we are a lot more free and expressive, but it can be weird because we don't have the same experiences that y'all had.
Right.
And
let me give you something. So you talk about the experiences. It's something that Derek said when he talked about how we grew up. You better not let them. You better not. Don't cry.
Yeah.
Take it like a man.
Right.
Suck it up.
Suck it
I
up.
think that's what the person in our viewing audience that said a lot of people take that to the grave because what?
You holding on to stuff. You holding on to stuff.
You hold it up. You feel a certain way. And you don't cry.
You hit it.
Sometimes you need a good emotion. I cry all the time now.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because you hit it. You hit it exactly where I was trying to get to with the negatives. I feel like a lot of men are holding on to so much stuff that they feel like they can't let go, that we don't realize that stuff they're holding is causing heart problems, it's causing stress issues, mental breakdowns, because people are holding on to stuff. I think about the fact that many Black men that I talk to about going to therapy.
But look,
that going and talking to someone and sharing your emotions. The idea of therapy to men is like,
it was like a taboo. You know what I mean?
But why do you think it was? What do you think about therapy?
That's the way it was brought up. It could have been as matter as financial. You know, I'm not going to pay to talk to somebody. You know what I mean? That's just it's different now. The way, you know, we don't have a problem going through therapy or anything like that. It's I mean, us as African Americans, we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
Me and your father been through things that you never even thought about experiencing.
I don't know nothing about it.
You know what I mean?
And I'm grateful.
But but we keep that in our mind. So
Right.
you know, so we instill things in you, so you don't have to go through the things, trial and
Right.
tribulations that we went
Yeah.
through.
Look at this. Look at this.
Are you about to
So
talk
I
about
wrote-
the emotions?
So,
negative?
yeah.
that's good.
So I wrote, man law keeps husbands from sharing their true feelings and emotions with their wives.
Right. Which causes a lot of communications issues.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
because now as a man, you don't want to tell, you feel like you can't just come out and tell how you really feel about something.
You don't want to be
So
vulnerable.
these stomach things.
You don't want to be
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're afraid that your wife going to use your
that
moment
against
of
you.
weakness against you.
Why?
Right.
So you hang on to it.
Now, okay, so I'm gonna put a challenge. Hold on.
Wives are petty.
But I'm gonna put a challenge out there to the women who are watching this to really listen to this. And this is not an indictment because, of course, men have their issues as well.
Sure.
But I think there are a lot of women that are watching who want their husbands, boyfriends, men in their lives to open up and express their emotions. But how many times have men opened up and expressed their emotions only to
Use
have
it against
what
them.
they opened up used as a weapon
And
against
they're
them?
afraid to do it because they don't want to be shamed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that. I see that on social media. We got people like the Shade Room and all those other places. You got men that open up and do things to express or be funny, and women swear they want a man that shows emotions until the man shows emotions. And then the comments on stuff like the share, it gets vicious. People are sissy. You acting like a girl.
There we go.
You act like a bitch. Like you're doing all of those things when the minute you decide to show some emotion. So I think your first point about men showing emotions to their wives, I think is important, because I think if we're going to do that, which we desire to do, we have to know that we have the safety and trust that it's not going to be used against us.
Yeah, but that was also my wife told me today that a gentleman who's doing some work for us, his 27-year-old son passed away. Man, not dealing with your emotions, man, that is very unhealthy.
Yeah,
and internalizing that, because if I can't, that Proverbs 31 woman, I think one of the scriptures said her husband does safely trust in her. And
that's good.
If I don't feel like my wife, I can trust in my wife, if I can confide in her and talk to her and express to her in my moments of weakness.
Or friends or anybody in relationship.
Yeah,
in
and then
any
they will throw it
relationship.
back in my face and use it against me like friends in relationship. You go and telling my business to everybody. I can't confide now. I didn't confide it in you. I didn't trust it in revealing to you some vulnerable spots in my life, and you didn't turn it against me by sharing it and talking my business with the friends. And I know because I never shared it with anybody else, and I'm hearing my stuff in the streets.
So
That's gonna cause me to shut down
I'll
my
put
mouth.
another challenge out there to people that are watching. If you expect men to show emotions and be healthy, then stop breaking the trust that they are developing with you so that they'll be willing to show those emotions. My dad we were talking about some stuff beforehand, and I think this is a good moment to deal with these negative thoughts of emotions. So I think he had written down.
I had 3 areas of negative emotion. First one is condemnation. It is an inner emotion and thought that tends to bring feelings that can be life-defeating and joy-stealing. And as the accuser of the brethren, as the devil always does, his job is to remind us of what we've done in the past, particularly those bad things. So condemnation is a negative emotion. Bitterness and unforgiveness. Couple them two together right there. You don't forgive and you just bitter. Your heart just grows harder and harder and harder towards somebody until eventually that emotion spills out. That dude yesterday that got killed at that protest, that boy sprayed him and sprayed him and sprayed him. He pointed that gun, and at some point, that boy's emotions just erupted till he pulled the trigger and killed that man just like that.
People black out because they let
Blank out.
They black out.
Man, they hold on to that stuff till it explodes like a volcano.
But that's such a thing that so many men deal with and don't realize how unhealthy it is.
Kill wives,
because they have built it up so hard, and you won't talk to anybody, you won't get any help, you won't trust anybody, and you let that emotion build and build and build until you make a reckless and irrational decision based off of one emotion
ruin your life.
Ruin your life.
Yep.
And there's so many.
Like,
there.
jail is probably filled
I
with
was
people
just about
that
to say
couldn't
that.
control their emotions.
Exactly.
And there's a difference, I think, and that's why I think we have to balance the good with the bad, because I do believe men are very good at and talented at helping to hone their emotions in the right way. I believe a lot of men are good in this sense, putting it into work or putting our emotions or not going off at some time. But that's only if you are really controlling it and releasing it and letting it go and moving on. But if that control is really just you bottling it up, and it's not so much you controlling your emotions, but you just keep stifling them and stifling them and stifling them and stifling. Because controlling your emotions is good, but bottling up your emotions is not good.
Okay, so I wrote controlling your emotion is good. I'll put right here, no one can cast self out of them. You got self, you got to deal with you.
That's good.
You
man.
have to deal with you. You can't cast self out. You have to deal with you. You have to deal with your emotions. If you don't check yourself, you gonna wreck yourself.
Oh, that's good.
You have to learn to deal with your emotions.
Yeah.
You have to, the other negative emotion that I didn't mention was fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with that fear and anxiety, we already said that will take you out. Fear causes people to do all kinds of stuff.
Well, that's crazy to me, because I'm thinking about how many men, like we talk about men that are sitting in prison or in life, are sitting after a thing is over and going, I didn't even know I had that inside of me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They never dealt with themselves. And so they realized I didn't even know they done killed somebody and didn't even know they had them inside. I'm going to talk about this moment, and I don't think my dad is going to mind, because he's already testified about this himself. I remember months ago, we were heading somewhere, and the guy hit the car.
Yeah.
We were driving somewhere, y'all. Listen to this. We were driving somewhere. My dad was driving. We needed to get to where we were going. And a man did not want to let us over in the lane. And long story short, the man purposely hit the car that we were driving. And my father was mad. Dad, please tell him what you were feeling. Don't tell him the whole thing. Tell him what you were feeling in that moment. Tell him what emotions came up.
I ain't what I was feeling is what I did. I pulled that car over, and I was waiting for him to pull his car over. And he got out, and I looked at him. I said, you did that on purpose.
And he began to show emotion. And so the guy began to get angry. And then my dad got angry. And then the guy got angry. And then the guy took off his shirt like he was getting ready to fight. Then he proceeded to say, I just got out of prison. And I'm talking to my dad. I'm on the phone with my mother and sister on speakerphone. And I'm yelling at my dad, just get in the car and let's go. Let's just get in the car and let's go. And he was so mad that my father is trained to do a lot of things. So it's hard to get him out of character. And I'm talking about he was enraged with this guy.
I couldn't believe that he did that. And I'm looking at him in the rearview mirror that he purposely hit my car. I mean, it was one of them two lanes merging into one. I was well ahead of his car, and he sped up to try to keep me from getting in.
But listen to this. This is the point that I want to get to. At the end of this,
hit the car.
At the end of this encounter, after we told him, Dad, get in the car. Finally, we got him back in the car. Finally, we left the man on the side of the road. They were getting ready to fight. We proceeded to tell my dad, hey, you got so angry with the man to the point of a fight. That man is yelling that he just got out of prison. We telling my dad, in this day and age, that man was walking to his car. We don't know if that man went and got a gun out of his car, came back out of the argument, and shot you dead on the street. We don't know where this man is doing.
A lot of people get sent back to jail.
Yeah, a whole lot of,
and so, that's how people get in a moment. Road rage and a fit of anger, you lose your self-control, and because of you lost your self-control, you dead, you in jail, somebody in your family dead.
And literally in that moment, Dad, to go what we were talking about earlier, I'll never forget, after it was over, my dad came back to talk to us about it, and he literally had tears in his eyes, and he said, I didn't know that I had that still on the inside of me.
Absolutely.
My dad literally looked at us and said, he couldn't catch himself, because he realized in that moment that rage that he had inside of him was something that he had to deal with, that he didn't realize was still there until a critical moment.
Because we don't like being taken advantage of. And when you feel like you're being taken advantage of, all kinds of emotions come out. And guess what? You lose your self-control. Anything can happen to you. You got to be wise. I mean, you got to learn to walk in wisdom. One of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control. You got to learn to let God in your patience possess your soul. Before you haul off and say something, before you haul off and do something, get a view of the consequences.
Yeah.
Think about it before you do. Get a view of the consequence. Think about this. It can go this way or it can go that way.
Absolutely.
And then you have to make the decision. Your emotions, if you're being led by your emotions,
you're being led by fear, anxiety, bitterness, unforgiveness,
condemnation. If you're led by that, it will cause you to make the wrong decision. But if you will pause and allow God in your patience possess your soul, when you are patient, when you slow down and think, you will think, okay, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because you give God an opportunity, a moment of pause to guide you into the right direction so that you don't make a poor choice. But how many times do we just, what they say? They say we go there. We go there. We go there means I done run through all the stop signs. I done run through all the stops. Everything that I've been taught, I done left all of that. Boom. I just do what comes natural.
Okay. So this is what I want to know from Uncle Derek. How do men fix that part of them that wants to go to that point and just react? And like, have you had a time that you wanted to go to that point and just react? And then how do you come back? Because I think some people that may owe some people some apologies, or they may need to do something different. Like, what should they do now, in your opinion?
But I mean, I think it comes with maturity as well.
It
comes with growth. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you are in a certain environment. Because I always worked in a government environment. You know, owning my own company, being among different nationalities, people, you know, different, you know, mindsets. So you have to think about what you said, what is being said, because you can't react because somebody else reacted to you. The consequences are, unfortunately, but they are different from me as an African American, for me, or another individual as a Caucasian. That's just point blank. And I, you know, I kind of wanted to bring up another point from Pamela was doing the debate.
Kamala,
and everybody was saying why she did, you know, let him go hard and everything, and because she didn't want to be portrayed as a angry black woman,
right?
You know, so she had to control her emotions and smile and take what was given to her.
That's
and
good.
That's the same thing as black men and black women.
Because the minute we raise our voices, we become animals. We become intimidating animals.
Absolutely.
And so we have people who feel like they can't get angry, or they can't cry, or they can't show emotion, because emotion for men is normally equated to some form of negative.
But that's a stigma of a black man. You know what I mean? They almost try to put all of us in the same barrel. Mm-hmm. You know, we all act the same. We all dress the same. We all think the same. But that's far from the truth.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So Mommy has a question. She says, how do you suggest a woman is to deal with an emotional man?
Somebody else, I believe. I think she said emotionless. Or did she say emotional? Well, let's deal with both, because she said emotionless, but I want to deal with both.
Yeah.
So for people who are trying to deal with an emotionless man, I will say somebody else answered in the comments. Somebody in the comments said, I have learned when my husband is talking that sometimes I need to just listen.
That's big.
And I think that is a big thing, because I think a lot of times when men are sharing their emotions, women who love them and want to care for them, women often feel the need to assist in training the man that they're in relationship with. Like they feel an innate need to make that man better, which is what God put them on earth for. But sometimes if a man is sharing their emotions or taking a moment to share their emotions, you can cause them to shut down and continue to be emotionless if you don't listen to what they're saying and instead begin to interrupt with ways that they can fix what they're saying. Like, I remember being in conversations where I want to share some emotion, and halfway through the conversation, we're talking about what I need to do better and what I'm not good at as a man. I'm like, I'm not gonna keep sharing my emotions if the end of this is gonna end up with a lecture.
Yeah.
I don't want to lecture every single time.
Right. So I'm trying to get it straight. How to deal with an emotionless man.
Someone with times that he does share his emotions.
Thank you. So somebody who is emotionless, you can't pick up signals from them because they show no emotion. So the times that they open up and talk,
you gotta listen.
That is the golden moment. If you want to get something out of him, figure out where he is. You gotta close your mouth and listen.
Just listen.
Listen to what they're saying, because now you got them talking. Stop interrupting. Take a few moments. Just take some time. Stop flapping your gum, woman. Close your mouth and just listen.
But it goes both ways. As a male versus I know in my situation, my wife, she gets sometimes rant and want to express and talk about sometimes I always want to fix her problems. But that's not a lot of times. That's not what she wants. She want to just be able to express herself, talk to me, and tell me what's going on, and I just need to listen. And she might have already, to be able to work through her emotions and not trying to fix everything. We always want to. I can fix it.
Instead of listen, we're trying to solve it.
Exactly.
Let me vent. Let me share with you before you try to solve my problem. I need someone to hear. That's that release. I need to talk it through. I need to vent. I need to let something out because something has angered me.
And I have
something
to grow
has
to
upset
maturity.
me.
I have to process it. So let's flip to the other side of it, which is how do you deal with an emotional man? So a man who shows a lot of emotion, and it's how do you interact with that person? I'll say for me, I believe that your emotions need to be controlled at times. And I believe every man, since we're talking about men, not that everybody doesn't apply to this statement, but because we're talking about men, needs to learn how and when to have their emotions, to show their emotions, to put their emotions in the right perspective. All of those are healthy tools. But the worst thing you can do when a man shows that emotion is to equate that emotion to femininity or vulnerability. That is the worst thing, because a lot of times that happens with men who show emotions, where immediately the people that are watching, the women in their lives, the other men in their lives that are watching them, immediately they go into one of two categories, feminine or vulnerable. And the minute they go into one of those categories, they feel extremely exposed. And when they feel exposed, they no longer feel like they can show that emotion, and they learn how to cover that emotion in unhealthy ways. Absolutely. That's the thing. When you don't put them in two categories, where you don't either make them feminine or make them vulnerable, you can teach them how to show emotions in a healthy way. But if you put them in those categories first, then all you are ever going to teach them is how to show their emotion or cover their emotions in an unhealthy way.
So let me give you an example. If a man, what do you do with a man who's very emotional? You have to help that man to learn to manage his emotions. He's got to learn to manage. So he's a very emotional person. Because you can't get rid of your emotions. You have to learn how to manage it. Listen
hold
to
on.
this.
And I want to real quick just pause, because somebody asked a good secondary question to the statement that was just made. My wife did. She said, what's wrong with vulnerability? I think that you are correct. So it's not that vulnerability is inherently negative, but it is the way that we view vulnerability that could be negative. It's not them being vulnerable that's the problem. It's we take vulnerability as an opportunity to attack.
Yeah.
There you go.
We take vulnerability as an opportunity. That goes all the way back to what we were saying in the beginning. They become vulnerable, and then we use that vulnerability against them.
Right.
And that's the problem.
That's good. That's good. Listen to this about anger. This is Proverbs 16 and verse 32. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. He who rules his own spirit is better than he who takes a city. And I wrote right here, if we can control our emotion, there's no limit on what we can accomplish. That's what that scripture is saying. Even in the anger, the Bible said, be angry and sin not. Jesus got angry, but he didn't sin. He challenged that anger when he kicked them boys out of the temple that was trying to fleece the people and stuff. He channeled his anger, and it was a righteous indignation. You have to learn when to hold them, learn when to fold them, learn when to walk away. And that's in any area of life. You flying out, a lot of you all know how to control that anger when you're dealing with your supervisor, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, you get a
absolutely.
view of the consequences, and you check yourself like I talked about before you wreck yourself. So why don't you do that in marriage? Why don't you think about the consequences? Think about the fact that, man, the words that I say and the things that I do is hurting the person that I had planned to
Absolutely.
spend the rest of my life with.
Aunt Darius said this before, and I wanted to make sure I brought it in because she said, words once spoken can never be retrieved. Once we have to realize as men that deal in emotions, when we allow that vitriol to come out and that anger to come out, we cannot take back the things that we have said. We cannot take back the impact that our words make on the people around us. So, Dad, I think because we're going to get to questions, I want to segue into the good. We talked about that bitterness and wrath, which is the negative displays of emotion. Real quick, I want to hit some of the positive ways that men can show their emotions.
The positive ways that they can show their emotions.
The positives. You had like 3 of them on there.
Well, I think one of the things you can do is just, men being tender. And that we talked about the man law, toughen up, don't cry, don't show any emotion, be hard. Man, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. The best guy knows that don't work with women being hard all the time, because guess what? Women are multipliers. You give them groceries, they will make dinner. You give them seed, they will make a baby. You give them yelling and being hard and mean and tough exterior all the time, guess what? You're going to cause them to be the same way, and they're just going to multiply back to you.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is learn to be tender, man.
I think that needs to, that I want to make sure that, because I think this is really good for wives, but I think a lot of people won't go so far as say this is really good between brothers and husbands and fathers and friends. I think there's, we've heard this term before. Many people heard this term, toxic masculinity. And we hear this term, and it's because a lot of times in brotherhood and in man-to-man friendships and relationships, non-sexual, nothing to do with sexuality, we have a problem being tender with one another.
Right.
We have a problem hugging another man. There's some fathers
pre-COVID.
Yeah, we know it. But it's fathers out there that ain't hugged their sons since their son turned 16.
Sure.
Or you haven't hugged your father or hugged another man, your best friend. Like how it's okay to show a tenderness to another man and it not mean that something is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. This past Father's Day, you and I did something, and I used a lot of clips from Good Times. I was showing, different things where James Evans, the father in Good Times, was doing some things. But I just, this past weekend, I taped another episode. And what it was is James was having some problems with his job, and he was feeling down on himself. And Thelma and JJ conspired together. Hey man, let's add Dad to solve our problem. And then when he solved the problem, he was like, oh yeah, he did a great job and stuff like that. And then Florida did the same thing, and then he was feeling all good. And then JJ, as he was walking away, he said now he feels better. And then James like, what you mean JJ feel better? Oh man, I knew that was a bunch of bull. Y'all was snowing me and stuff like that. And here Michael had left a sheet of paper where he was writing about his hero in his life was his dad. And he said, y'all even got the militant midget in on this now. And James called Michael out and started yelling out, Michael! He started hollering at Michael. And then he said, Daddy, he said, I meant those things. And he began to talk about the things that he said. And Florida began to read the things. And she said, now, James, does that sound like he pulling a con job, or do you think that sounds like exactly
the
like
he feels
like
for his father?
For you?
That's
and
the
then
emotions
what shocked me for the first time, and I missed it, James went down, grabbed Michael, hugged him, and kissed him on his cheek.
Yeah.
And I ain't never seen James ever. That got to be the only, y'all check it out. It got to be the only episode of Good Times that James Evans actually kiss, other than Florida, kissed his son. I ain't
Because
never seen
it's taboo. It's
JJ,
taboo.
Michael, anything. I was like, get out of here. Would you look at this?
Our pastor, Dr. Mike, that's something that I enjoy watching about him, just from a purely loving perspective. He talks about how he purposely started to just kiss his sons as a direct revolt against this idea that I can't show my son some affection. I can't be tender with another man and it not mean some other something. So I think that's one thing.
And you be hard, but
you got to learn that, I think, too.
You gotta learn.
You know what I mean? It sometimes it just doesn't come easy to individuals to be able to show that emotion, show that affection. So and I think it still goes back to showing, coming with maturity and understanding the way you feel and the way you express yourself with family members.
Derek, so maturing, it doesn't cause me to be softer. I have to be willing to see that it is a deficit in my being hard all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So the maturity is I'm learning being this way. Look at the damage, look biblical. At the detriment that it's doing to those around me.
Biblical.
And maturity, you realize I can't keep doing the same thing and getting the same results.
That's biblical.
Look what I'm doing to my family.
When you look at the Bible, and because this is Modern Christian Monday, that is literally a biblical principle. When you look at what God did and how he would wash the feet, Jesus would wash the feet of people. He would kiss people. He would rub their eyes. He would have tender moments with people in order to enact his work. He had emotions that he was willing to show people. Not only that, but when you look at vulnerability, the Bible literally says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Right. So if you're not willing to be vulnerable at any point in time and open up and express something, then you're not going to be able to express emotions the way you can.
God even did that for Jesus.
Yeah.
When Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan and the Spirit of God descended on him like a dove, why did God come out and say, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased? Because from then on, Jesus began to start his ministry.
Right.
Now that he was baptized with the Holy Spirit, he was getting ready to go and suffer many things. And it was as much a confidence booster to Jesus. And if you don't think Jesus needed a confidence booster, when he came out of that wilderness, having contended with the devil himself, it said after that was done, it said angels came down and ministered to him.
Yeah.
Because Jesus was a man. He was a man showing us he was God, but he came down here. God, it said, God in the form of man to show us you can walk this out too. So even he needed encouragement. Yeah. He needed to be loved. He needed to be, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, it said blood came out of his veins. It says he wept, Father. I mean, he's so agonized over being separated from God that it said he forced blood from his veins.
Yeah.
And then he had to be encouraged to the point where he said, nevertheless, he got a grip on himself. Nevertheless, not my will be done, but thy will be done.
This has been so good. I want to answer a few questions that people have. I'm going to look on my phone and grab them because this is good. Kimberly Patrice said, how do you let him? Oh, I'm seeing it right up here. It says, what action do you take after doing something that betrayed the trust of another person? What action do you take to deal with those emotions? Because I think a large emotion that people are dealing with when they do that is that guilt. And I think that goes back to that guilt and condemnation. You feel so condemned because of what you've done to break the trust of another person. How do you come back from that,
to gain that
from that condemnation?
So you first thing you got to do is you got to admit it. You got to admit it. You just can't keep going on as if things are business as usual. You got to admit you missed it. You did something.
It's okay
that wasn't right. It's okay to say you were wrong. Well, who was that? The Fonz back in Happy Days. I remember as a kid growing up, the Fonz was the coolest thing around. He would say, I was, he couldn't say I was wrong. And that built up in me. That you can't say that you're wrong. John Wayne had a movie and said, never say I'm sorry. Sorry is a sign of weakness. No, sorry just means I'm sorrowful for what I did. What I did caused you pain. What I did caused you harm. I am sorrowful that I did that to you. So first of all, admit it. That's the first thing. And then it's got to be some time. some time and some consistent behavior
Gotta be
to
time.
allow. Say it, brother. Lo.
Time and
Say it, brother.
To heal.
Heal.
You have to heal.
Heal.
It just doesn't change like that. And you have to gain that trust back as well.
And don't get mad because they ain't automatically coming around
Absolutely.
to your apology or feeling sorrow. Man, there's been some
That's where
hurt.
bitterness
There's
comes
been,
in.
yeah.
You see how all this is
Come on,
tied
man.
into them negative emotions?
Come on.
When you that condemnation comes because you feel guilty about it. That pride comes because you don't want to admit you were wrong. That bitterness comes because you feel like somebody should forgive you quicker than you are ready
Right.
for them, that they are ready to forgive you. So these are all kind of core emotions that a lot of men are dealing with.
Yeah.
Women never forget.
Yeah, that's good stuff. There's another
There's
question.
another question.
Oh, what is that question?
It said, would you say being emotional and sensitive is the same?
No, I wouldn't say
No.
it.
No.
Emotion is an outward expression, and sensitive could be an internal
I
feeling.
That's good.
I agree with that.
That's
Yeah.
good.
So emotion is something that you see outward. Sensitivity
yourself.
is like an unction, a feeling. You're sensitive to people's feelings. So no, I wouldn't say they might be two sides of the same.
Now,
coin,
I think
but they're not
a
the same.
person's emotions can show that they're sensitive in an area. So I think their sensitivity can be displayed through emotion. But a lot of people are sensitive and not emotional at all.
Right.
A lot of people are sensitive about things, and you do whatever you do to them, and they don't ever speak about what you did. But they were sensitive. It impacted them. It was hurtful. So another question. How do you let him, the man, know that it's okay to open up when I have to assume what your feelings is when things go wrong?
You have to talk to him.
Yes.
To let him express
Well,
himself.
let me-
Communication.
let me-
Come back to communication.
I agree, but let me take a step back. I think this is something that my mom always did with my dad that I never understood when I got older. Me and my dad would get into conversations about things, and our emotions about the thing would go head to head. Like we would just go head to head with the way we felt about a thing. And I used to feel like my dad was so wrong and he was prideful and not listening. And I never forget my mom used to be like, you have to know when to stop and come back and have another conversation at a later date.
Mhm.
So I think talking to them is important. And you want to let him know that it's okay to open up, but he is only going to open up with time and consistency.
True.
So just because he doesn't open up the first second,
time.
it could be the 60th or the 70th time. Agape love says that I'm going to keep being consistent and keep asking until it breaks through the wall that the enemy has tried to put up, and you let your guard down enough to speak to me. But if I get angry or bitter or mad or enraged because you will not open up, and I get it, sometimes you can only ask the man but so much to open up, and they won't do it. And maybe you're not the one that's meant to get them to open up. Maybe you're just the one that's meant to plant the seed for somebody else to water and for somebody else to get them to open up. But you have to choose to be consistent. If you are going to be inconsistent and get mad the moment, the week, or the month, or 2 months that man will not open up to you, then you are probably not the one deserving or willing to handle what he's going to open up about.
Yeah, that's why. Go ahead, say
I
it.
mean, he has to be ready to open.
He has to be
Yeah,
ready.
You can't
force
force
that.
it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't make
You
people do
know,
that.
the Bible talks about, particularly, we're talking about marriage, right? The two become one. Become one. We should, husband and wife should be a safe haven for one another. I ought to be able to talk to you about my concerns, and you ought to be able to talk to me about your concern, and I not attack you as a result of you sharing with me how you feel. May be making you feel a certain way. You may be making me feel a certain way by some of your actions. We have to be free to talk and to share with one another and not go at each other's throat as if we're the enemy. We got to be each other's safe haven.
Mama said, you literally didn't even say y'all married, y'all on one accord. Y'all don't even know. Mom put, people will never open up until they feel safe.
Sure.
And so if they're not opening up to you, focus on creating a space that is safe for an individual to feel like they can speak. Because that's what agape love does. When we look at our example of the love of God, one, he continuously chases after us. He is consistent about chasing after us and about loving us in spite of. And two, he never throws what we've done back up in our faces. That's literally the key to forgiveness. God will never throw a mistake back up and weaponize your mistake against you. That will never happen. Liz Biz said, this is good stuff. How do you get this message to the audience in which you are gearing towards? As usual, it's the women that's tuned. Men, as usual, that's women that's tuned in. The best thing you can do, it's that kind of goes along with my last statement. You create a safe space. How about you sit down and you ask the man to watch it with you? Don't just say, you need to watch this. You don't deal with your emotions and you need to watch this thing. You need to, I need just, no. Why don't you sit down and say, hey, there's some men talking about something and I want us to sit down and watch it together. And here's going to be the funny part. After we watch it together, we can either talk about it, or if you don't want to talk about it, I don't need to ask you any questions. I just got you to watch it.
That's a good start.
That's hard for people. That especially a lot of women and even more so married people that I know. It's okay to say, I want you to watch this. And if they're not ready to talk about it right then, leave it alone. You made a step, or send it to somebody and ask them to watch it. Forward the message to them and ask them to watch it. Put it somewhere, create the space for them to watch it. But then don't get upset or angry if they are not ready.
And don't set them up. You need to watch this. You need
no.
Don't
put that pressure on nobody. If you share the information, you create the safe space. I'm gonna say that again. Y'all put that in the comments if y'all with me. You want a man to be willing to open up, create a safe space, and then listen.
Right.
Because it's going to be tough for them. It's going to be tough for that individual to open up to you in that safe haven space, because it's still trust. Even though you married, you've been with this individual significant other for years and years and years, but they have to be willing to share and express themselves to let you in to their emotion and the way they feel.
And you got to be willing to sit through those years of trauma that got to get peeled back. You don't understand that men, especially African American men, and like I said, this live is about African American men. So whenever we talk about these things, it's sort of like all lives matter. Please don't come on here and feel like we're saying women haven't gone through trauma or other people. We're not all lives mattering this. We understand everybody has been through trauma, but this conversation is about the men in your life and our perspective. So for this conversation and creating the space and listening, you got years of trauma that you got to let people peel off. And you got to know if you're the woman or other man or friend that is willing and able to sit and wait for all of that stuff to peel back before you get to the heart of a thing that needs to be dealt with.
Monica Thornton says, sometimes I step back and let him come into me when he's ready.
Absolutely.
That's all you can do.
That's good.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Don't forget. And you know what? In the meantime, what you can do is you can be praying. Pray for two things. One, God, show me what I need to do to be a better wife to this man, to better reach him. And then at the same time, pray, God, I can't get to him, but you can get to him, and pray and lift him up and allow God to deal with him, because God knows everything about him, and he can speak and deal and send people across his path that will speak a word, they'll give a message that will get to that heart of his. And that's what men need. I've said this on previous broadcasts. If I can get to your heart, I can change your habits.
And the only way you're going to get through their heart is through time and trust. You got to develop trust and develop that safe space. Last point I want to make sure we make, because I think this is something for the future, and then we got to get out of here. Also, something that you can do is raise your sons to have a propensity and an ability to manage their emotion, but know how to share those emotions. Don't tell your sons that are growing up, stop using these terms like they punking out if they don't act a certain way, or they are wuss if they act a certain way, or if they show tears. We gotta stop. That's where we get into that whole toxic masculinity conversation. We gotta stop putting expectations on children to act like grown men.
But we got to stop with the name calling.
And
We do that as parents. We throw out names to our kids, and it goes into their mind, and they end up thinking that's the way they are, and that's the way to react to that.
You're telling your 13-year-old be a man. He's not. He's not a man.
He's a young man.
He's a young man, or he's a young boy. You telling your 7-year-old be a man. They are not. So if they're crying, they're a child. So not saying that you can't help them learn how to manage their emotions, and they throwing a tantrum, and you want to help them grow to maturity. That's not what we're saying. But you can't shut down the emotions of a child, because all of that will build up and come out negatively.
The Bible says in Psalms 23:7, as a man thinketh, so is he. That's good or bad.
Yeah.
And dad, parents, if you instilling in your kids, you weak, you this, you that, all these negative things, you're establishing their identity. You're putting that in there, because if mom and dad say it, it must be true. And you're instilling it, so you can instill negative stuff, and a person think, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. Your words are life or death. The Bible said there's power of life and death in the word. And you got to be careful. And again, this all goes back to emotions, because when those emotions are raging and we're out of self-control, we say a lot of things, and to the hearer, it gets on the inside. And where does it go to? It goes through the things go into the eye gate, words go into the ear gate, and they go straight down into their heart. And they begin to establish an identity in you. And now you could be very damaging to that child. So, and that's not just men, that's boy or girl.
Absolutely.
What you say, they get their identity by what mom and dad instills in them.
This is good.
Go ahead.
So good. Final thoughts. Dad, what's your final thought?
I think this was a good show. I never thought that I'll be able to express and show emotions like this, but thank you for having me on y'all podcast.
And through.
At the last minute, I jumped in and
Derek,
special guest. Hey, Dad, final thoughts.
Okay, I put a summary here. Most people think that emotions can't be controlled, but God gave us emotions as a gift that we must control and not allow them to govern us or control our lives. We have the potential to be overwhelmed by feelings of depression, rejection, or inferiority, but there is no reason to be emotionally out of control. The enemy uses our emotions to try to move us away from God's will for our lives. So we must be vigilant against attacks in this area. When we find ourselves in a situation where our emotions are raging, we must not allow it to dictate how we feel. Instead, we have the power to take charge and proactively deal with our emotions. Don't be discouraged if the control of your emotions is not immediate. The Apollo missions to the moon were not straight shots, but a series of course corrections every 10 minutes. The Bible says we press towards the mark for the high calling of God. It's the same premise that we all blast off. The good thing is that we're on our way. We're on our way around just like that Apollo mission, but we're making fine-tuned course changes in our lives, just little course changes. So on your journey to control your emotions, don't get down on yourself if you don't get it right the first time. Ask God to help you and just keep working on that area until you get that area working to where you're in control of yourself and you don't continue to do the same thing, the same damaging thing over and over and over again. Because as we all know, if you continue to do the same thing over and over, you're a fool to think if you're going to get different results.
Yeah. I will say in closing that our emotions are not inherently evil. Our emotions are used the way that we allow them to be used. So if you're having emotions as a man, I don't want you to think that having emotions is inherently bad or evil. You cannot get rid of your emotions. You're a human being. So attempting to beat your emotions or beat somebody's emotions out of them or get rid of your emotions or pretend like they don't exist, it is never going to produce a beneficial or healthy lifestyle because you cannot get rid of your emotions. Your emotions are not inherently evil. Your emotions are there to serve whatever way you point them in the direction to serve. So just like they were saying, managing your emotions, you got to learn how to take your emotions and point them into healthy discussions, point them into great work, point them into changing the world, point them into having loving conversations with your children and your family and your wife. You have to point your emotions in the right way. And that is what we have come to say. Talk about emotions tonight. Thank y'all for tuning in. We love y'all. Thank you for all the questions and all the comments and all the people that were on. We're grateful. Again, this platform is here for the modern Christian family, that we have real, relatable, and relevant conversations where we just talk about anything under the sun. But it's because we are not flawless, but faithful. We can talk about our flaws. We can talk about some of the negative things that we've been in. And what you need to do after this is, like we said, share this with a man. Don't beat over his head, but share this with a man you think needs to watch this. Maybe sit down and watch it with him if he feels like talking about it or doesn't feel like talking about it. At least you've shared the information with him. I see some of y'all commenting and saying that this was eye-opening and this was great. We love you guys, and y'all have a wonderful night. See y'all later.